Hi there everyone, Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology, and today we're going to dive into a brand new series on medical astrology. Now, as many of you know, medical astrology is one of the pillars of what we offer as an education here at Oraculos, but one of the things that people often don't know is exactly what medical astrology is. I believe that medical astrology is part and parcel of every natal astrology consultation. And the reason for that is because, traditionally speaking, we never had a separation between the work of the medical astrologer versus the work of the natal astrologer. Traditionally speaking, we didn't have this certification culture in astrology that we currently have today. So there wasn't a vocational astrologer or a marriage astrologer or a fertility astrologer or a medical astrologer or a financial astrologer. All of these people were the same person, because all of these elements of life constitute a person's individual existence. And from a traditional perspective, every natal astrology reading begins with an assessment of the soul and psyche, otherwise known as the personality. But after we've spoken about the non-tangible elements of ourselves, the very next step or the very next frontier for us to explore is the frontier of the realities of our physical embodiment in this lifetime. As a result of this, our readings, traditionally speaking, always begin with an assessment of the first house, because the ancients tell us that the first house represents not only the dweller within the flesh, but also the flesh within which we dwell. Therefore, when we assess the first house, we're doing so from the perspective of understanding our non-tangible being, as well as our physical and physiological being. When we begin this form of medical astrology assessment, we do so by noting the ruler of the ascendant, aspects to the rule of the ascendant, house location of the rule of the ascendant, planets in the first house, because all of these things are going to give us insight into who we are as people. In the words of one of my traditional Jyotish teachers, the first house carries the quantum of energy with which we are meant to exist within this lifetime. So it is from the ascendant that the rest of the chart receives the vitality that it needs in order to assist us in carrying out our natal promise within this lifetime. Now, at Oraculos, we have a system for doing everything, and that includes medical astrology as well. So I have divided our medical astrology approach into 4 prongs. The very first thing that we assess from a medical astrology perspective is the soul and psyche of the native. The ancients thought that the first house itself was the home of our living souls within this lifetime. And in a modern context, the soul is really a reference to our mind, our personality, our way of thinking, and foundationally how we move ourselves through the world and what sort of thought processes we utilize to aid us in that navigation. Many of the things that manifest as extensions of our personality from a personality assessment perspective are direct correlatives to the things that manifest within our physical bodies from the perspective of disease. So we want to have an assessment of who we are foundationally, because that foundational understanding of who we are oftentimes gives us a very vital insight into some of the things that are going to manifest within our larger physiological health. For example, if somebody is a very Martian person, that's going to show up not just as inflammation in terms of the words they speak and their ability to inflame others because they get on people's nerves, but that's also going to show up in terms of inflammation that that person may hold within their physical constitution or a general proneness towards inflammation. Similarly, if a person is more of a Saturnian person, whereas they tend to have a dour or a more pessimistic or a more practical or earth-based understanding of themselves and the world around them, which is causing them not to make many risks within this lifetime, and it's causing them to stay on a very straight and narrow path and to hold themselves with a level of seriousness and a level of gravity that other peoples don't hold themselves accountable to, then that can manifest as that person being more physically inflexible within their bodies, or feeling more tension within their muscles and their joints, or being more prone towards skeletal deterioration or bone-based issues more than others around them, simply because from an emotional and a psychological perspective, they're holding themselves under that much more pressure and under that much more weight and heaviness than others around them. So this insight into the soul and psyche of people is of foundational importance as we move towards understanding that which is actually going on within the physiology of those same people we serve. Now, after we've assessed the soul and psyche of the native, the very next thing that we do in our four-pronged approach to medical astrology is we assess the basic constitution of the native. In my latest book, The New Western Medical Astrology, I dive into the topic of vitalism as a philosophy that underpins our medical astrology understanding and how this idea of vitality is foundational to our understanding of our personal health and well-being. So the very next step of our medical astrology assessment is understanding a person's basic level of vitality within this lifetime, as is represented by their foundational constitution. And we understand the foundational constitution of a person by assessing the ruler of their ascendant once again, but this time looking at that not as a proxy of that person's personality, but specifically as a proxy of that person's physical body. And this assessment can also be carried out through an understanding and an assessment of the luminaries of the native. And we dive far more into how to do this in our medical astrology diploma program here at the Oraculos School of Astrology. However, those three factors, the ruler of the ascendant as well as the luminaries, are our primary indices when it comes to understanding the physical constitution of a person before we even begin to dive into combinations that specifically signify disease within that person's constitution. The third step of our medical astrology rubric is an assessment of the Morbificant combinations within the natal chart. This idea of the Morbificant combinations is something that came to me from 17th century medical astrologer Richard Saunders in his text on medical astrology, in which he discusses the semen morbificum, or the seed of malevolence that manifests within a person's body that moves that body out of its foundational homeostasis or out of its foundational balance and more towards the manifestation of disease. And from this, I derived the term morbificant, and from there, I came up with the idea of the morbificant combinations within the birth chart. These combinations have nothing to do really with the signs of the zodiac, but they have more to do with the planet-to-planet relationships that we find within the astrological aspects. Aspects are not only the backbone of all great concrete astrology, but they're also the backbone of all true medical astrology. Today, within the 21st century, we have a tendency of oversimplifying everything astrologically speaking, and we have a tendency of whittling ourselves down to the 12 signs of the zodiac. And so people walk around saying, I'm this way because I'm a Taurus, or I'm that way because I'm a Sagittarius, or I'm this way because I'm a Gemini, or I speak to you in the way that I do because I'm a Scorpio. And in the process of doing that, we foundationally lose something that is very vital about astrology. And the most vital thing within astrology is the combination that exists between planets. That conversation is representing the actual living undercurrent of our astrology and not the static, frozen, dead positions of planets within signs of the zodiac. And so the Morbificant combinations are derived directly from the planetary aspects because there are some planetary aspects that have a greater ability to manifest more along the lines of concrete events within our lifetimes as opposed to others. And so in this part of our medical astrology system, we specifically look for those aspects that have a higher likelihood of manifesting a concrete issue within a person's life as opposed to others. Now, the fourth thing that we look for within our medical astrology rubric is the sociological manifestation of the Morbificant combinations. The same way as we have combinations that manifest within our personality is the same way how we have combinations that manifest within our physical bodies as well as within our one-on-one interactions with others in the world around us. And the reason for this is quite simple. We, as astrologers, have a very limited palette of resources to describe everything that occurs within our known universe. And that palette is essentially the 7 classical planets and the 3 modern planets and the combinations between them. And truly, when we combine the 7 classical planets and the modern planets, as well as the angles and the node, all we end up with are 78 combinations of stellar influences. And those 78 combinations of stellar influences are essentially meant to describe everything that occurs within our reality, from our personality to our physiological constitution, to which careers we might pursue within this lifetime, and also our sociological interactions with others. I believe that this is a very important part of an overall medical astrology assessment. Within my experience, I have found that many people find a deep sense of healing and solace when they can see the ways in which these morbificant combinations that correspond with the illnesses that they have also show up within some of the central challenges that they face in terms of their interpersonal relationships with others. And the reason for this is because a challenge within our personality from a medical astrology perspective will also show up as a challenge within our physical bodies, and it will also show up as a challenge that we face within the world at large. So the wisdom behind this is knowing that a problem on one part of our being manifests throughout every sphere of our human identity within this lifetime. And when we can fix or address or begin to give healing to the various manifestations of these energetic challenges that we face within this lifetime, we extend the balm of healing to every other part of our constitution, including our physiological being. Now, after saying all of this, you might still have the question, but why should I get a medical astrology reading to begin with? Or why should I even go about pursuing the study of medical astrology? For me, the answer to this is, on the one hand, as an astrologer, we should seek to be comprehensive and to be masters of every sphere of our field. And when it comes to natal astrology, medical astrology is truly at the heart of a natal astrologer's practice. And maybe some of you will never go into pursuing medical astrology as a specific area of emphasis for yourself within this lifetime. However, having that knowledge gives you the ability to engage in preventative measures to safeguard your health through your diet, through consultation with naturopathic physicians or Ayurvedic doctors or your primary care physician or anybody who has the tools necessary to help you in whatever preventative measures you're seeking to take to safeguard yourself within this lifetime from some of those morbificant combinations that may be present within your own chart. And I think this goes a very long way in the hands of astrologers who are parents, as well as in astrologers who simply are more health conscious, as well as astrologers who serve a community that desires natal astrology consultation. I think that becoming a medical astrologer or receiving a medical astrology reading just gives us another layer of insight into who we are within this lifetime. And there's something within that that feels solid and that feels good and that feels like it's connecting us and it's connecting our self-identity to something that much larger than ourselves, which ultimately is what astrology does for us in general. Astrology comes with this sense of us being connected to that which is greater than ourselves, always. But when we can see that manifest not only within our psychological experiences or our financial experiences or in our home life or in our romantic life, but when we can see that manifest within the very cellular constitution of who we are as people, it really gives us a moment of deep reverence and deep awe for this system of astrology that we've been given by the ancients. And it shows us that every part of who we are, every joy and every sorrow, every moment of vitality and every moment of sickness, everything that we find ourselves encountering within this lifetime is all a part of a plan that is much larger than anything that we ourselves can even conceive of. And for me, this is one of the reasons why I continue to practice medical astrology. Because when we can tap into that additional layer of being, when we can identify the traces of the divine within our physical body, just as much as we can identify it within our personality and within every other sphere of our lives, it consolidates a knowing within us that we are born of divinity, that everything that occurs within our lives originates from that divinity, and that we ourselves continue to be divine. Whether you have a cold, whether you have heartburn, whether you have an upset stomach, whether you have diarrhea, we continue to live out this natal promise in sickness and in health and in every aspect and area of our lives. And medical astrology gives us the ability to take our natal understanding of ourselves and our destiny that much deeper, so that as we grow the parts of ourselves that are spiritual, we're also rooting those spiritual aspirations within the realities of who we are as physical beings within this lifetime. So I hope you found this helpful, and I hope this helps you on your own path and in terms of your own decisions as to whether or not you should receive a medical astrology reading or study medical astrology for yourself. And as always, if you want to study with us here at the Oraculos School of Astrology, you can do so by visiting our website at oraculosastrology.com. And if you want to begin your study of medical astrology today, I highly recommend you purchasing my latest book, The New Western Medical Astrology, which you can buy on Amazon. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.